What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Calgary Barbell for another episode of Form Check Friday, the show or series where we take your user submitted videos, we collect them all in our inbox, we make a random number generator, select 5 videos each week, we take them, we put them up on this screen over here behind me using green screen magic. And we're going to analyze some things. We're going to look at how you guys are lifting and try to offer you guys some constructive advice on how to lift better, be more efficient, and ideally lift a little bit more weight in the long run. If you guys are interested in submitting, please only submit form checks to FORMCHECKFRIDAY@gmail.com. We get a lot of random submissions to other emails associated with us, and that's not where they go. They go to FORMCHECKFRIDAY@gmail.com. So please submit there and nowhere else. If you end up accidentally submitting to the wrong place, probably not going to end up on the YouTube here. So please be conscious of where you're submitting your videos. Anyways, without any further ado, we're going to get to our first video submission. Now, like I said, our first video submission, actually I didn't say this yet, but our first video submission comes from Bram. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right, but oh, there's audio on that. Sorry guys. Turn this down here, and we'll get this over on the right screen. There, you guys see that behind me? Perfect. One last thing, we're gonna pull up my drawing tool here so I can draw on the videos for you guys, because I really like the capability of being able to do that. I think it adds a fair bit to the analysis when you guys can kind of see what exactly I'm looking at. So we're looking at Bram's video here. It looks like he's gonna do some squats, and just gonna let this play in the background while I give you guys a little bit of background info. He said he's been lifting for about 2.5 years now, mostly upper body work, a bit of a bench bro, if you will. But he's recognized the error of his ways, and now he's coming around to doing some squatting. He's doing a second cycle of our free 16-week program. If you guys are interested in the free 16-week program, head over to calgarybarbell.com, click on the coaching shop, and there's a link to the free download in there. So he's squatting about 75% here. And he says that he tends to shrug before bracing, causing the bar to rise. He doesn't see many people doing this, wondering if that's a problem. Also, he's concerned about his low back position, saying that he doesn't have the strength. I'm not sure why that keeps changing sizes over there. It's kind of annoying. He says he doesn't have the strength to necessarily hold a good position and wants us to take a look at that. So, now that we have that background information, we're going to look over here at this squat. So pause squat, like you said, it was about 75%, and honestly, everything looks really good here, like really good. We don't see too much of a rise here. I think in some cases a lifter will kind of shrug up and then pull down. Again, that's not something I necessarily recommend, because we're going to see a pretty big or decent change in position for the lifters. There's my dog in the background. The lifter's shoulders are going to kind of change position, and that bar can shift. You can kind of mess with your bar position on your back. So it can be a little bit of an issue, but it looks like in your case it's subtle enough that we're not actually seeing too much movement out of the bar. We're going to pause this here and kind of scrub through nice and slow. So yeah, we're not seeing the shoulders move too much at all. The breath comes in, and we're not seeing the bar shift. Bronson, get out! Go! I thought you were watching the dogs, man. Sorry about that, guys. A little dog interruption there. But what I'm getting at here is that the sort of shrug that he's mentioning is subtle enough that we're really only seeing a tiny bit of movement in the bar there. I think if the movement was too much in the upper back, we might be kind of doing ourselves a disservice by putting the shoulder blades out of position. Now let's look at the other thing that he's talking about, his lower back. Now the lower back position to me looks great. Doesn't look overextended. It doesn't look like it's going into too much flexion. Not that those things are inherently bad, but in a lot of cases they can cause us to lift maybe a little bit less efficiently than we like to. Also, depth looks really good. So I honestly don't have much to critique for you here, man. I would say keep doing what you're doing. It looks good. It looks like you're developing good habits and patterns. So more or less, just keep it up. So that's that. That's our first submission from Bram. Now our next one's gonna come from David. Let's see if I can pull up David's deadlift video here, and we'll get that popping over there. All right, so let's look at what David's doing here. And David didn't really say too much, just that he's doing some sumo deadlifts. We'll kind of fast forward a little bit here. All right. So let's see how this goes for David. So pulling into position there, taking his time, pulling the slack out of the bar. Timing on the knees is good. We're maintaining position as he initiates the lift. So this is what I'm talking about by maintaining position when he starts the lift. Now let me see if I can get this pen to work here. Perfect. So we're just gonna draw a bit of a line on his back and a bit of a line through his femur. Now, when he goes to start the lift, we'll see this position he pulls into doesn't really change much. Everything kind of shifts back a little bit, but that's a really reasonable amount of shift to expect. So it looks like he's pulling the slack out of the bar effectively. And what I mean by that is sort of engaging everything against the bar such that when he starts pulling, everything's as tight as it's going to be, almost as if he had done an eccentric phase of the movement. We're seeing the knees lock even just slightly before the, not sure what the hell that is. Seeing the knees lock even just slightly before the hips lock, which is something I often advocate for. So yeah, everything looks really good there. I would say that's a really good, solid sumo deadlift. He's got another angle of the video here, so we'll take a look at that as well. Just kind of fast forward till he gets into position. And who knows, this form check today might just be me demonstrating what these people are doing right. We don't really preview these beforehand, but as you can see, and this is another thing that I often see people kind of mess up, I'm going to go ahead and just, again, kind of mark this shape here and note how that doesn't really change when he starts pulling. So we lock that in, and we don't see the knee angle change as we start pulling. You can see the initiation of the lift comes from knee extension. So obviously we see those knees going towards the midline a little bit, but we don't see a big shift in his shoulders or the torso, the upper body, which is fantastic. Really good deadlifting. So honestly, David, I don't really have too much to critique for you. I think you did a really good job of your deadlifts. I think you have a really proficient sumo deadlift. And I think that you should, again, just kind of keep practicing doing what you're doing, honing your craft, and continuing to practice those effective and productive skills. There you go. Alrighty. Our next video submission is going to come from Damian. And maybe Damian's going to make a couple more mistakes than the last guys. We're getting... I don't know if it's lucky or unlucky here, but we have a lot of really good, efficient lifters who have submitted their lifts today. All right, Damian, let's see what you got, man. So it looks like we're maybe setting up a hook grip on the bar there. Good. All right, so second rep to me looks a little bit better than the first. First, you can see there's this slight kind of dip where he anticipates dips and then pulls into the bar kind of quickly. And I'll see if you guys can see that. But see how he kind of pulls and the upper body jolts just a little bit? That to me is usually indicative of not pulling the slack out of the bar properly. So when we see that shift in the upper body position as the lifter initiates, what we need to do is apply more tension to the bar by tightening the back, the glutes, the hamstrings, the quads, just getting tighter in general against the bar before we start the lift. Now, if you watch, Damian does a much better job on the second lift, pulls in, sets the tension. The lats are a little bit better, the shoulder blades are in a little bit better position via, sort of pulling those shoulder blades down, getting that lat feeling going on there. And we see a lot less shift in his upper body as he starts that second rep. Same with the third rep. So I would just say work on that initial pulling the slack out of the bar in the first place, because we can see we get a little bit more hip rise on this than we do on the other ones. So hips kind of shoot up a little bit there, changing the back angle, whereas this one, the hips might start a little higher, but we're not seeing the same hip rise ahead of the shoulders. And especially on that third one, you do a really good job of maintaining that torso angle out of the bottom. Whereas this first rep here, we're seeing that big shift right here. See where the hips kind of shoot up faster than the rate of the bar in these frames here? Whereas if we go to this third rep, everything comes up at the same pace. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking for there. And that's generally how we can tell if we're pulling the slack out of the bar properly. Next up, we have a video from Kellen. And hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right, Kellen. Kellen Wells. He's doing sumo deadlift and he's really struggling with his position. So let's take a look at Kellen's deadlift position. Aha, okay. So single there can be a little bit hard to critique in some cases, but we can see, so I think it's a classic case of trying to be a little bit too upright. So when you try to get too upright, a lot of times what happens is if you're looking at the lifter from a side angle, and I can just illustrate it on here, is we're getting a little bit of flexion through this low back here. Because he's thinking about trying to get his hips really close to the bar so he can get really upright, it's to the point where it's now probably counterproductive. Because you'll notice as we initiate the lift, he holds pretty good position off the floor, although we do see those hips kind of creep up behind him. So probably starting with higher hips, thinking about pushing your back out, or sorry, your butt out behind you here. So not allowing your knees to come forward, but pushing your butt out behind you, putting more tension on the heels to allow yourself to get into a more neutral back position. Now, I don't say neutral back position because that's an injury risk, and we had a lot of feedback on the last video because there was a guy who was doing some deadlifts with a fairly rounded back, and everybody was saying, oh, that can't be safe. Oh no, I can't believe you said that guy has a good deadlift. But there's enough research to suggest now that what we thought were the injury risks of round back lifting have probably been relatively overstated. So when we're talking about being stronger, a lot of times we want to pull from the position that we're stronger in. Now, is it productive for this lifter to take 12 steps back? And speaking about the last lifter in the previous video, is it productive for this lifter to take 12 steps back in order to achieve a neutral back? And if so, why? Why is that more optimal? If he's having to take time off of loaded training, if he's having to take time to essentially learn a brand new movement, then how is that productive for his goals of being stronger as a powerlifter? Because of an overstated injury risk? I don't know. I disagree. Anyways, getting back to the point at hand here, I think that we could, in this case, create a more neutral back angle to help with what we're seeing at the end here, which is a really tough time locking out and finishing that low back. Because we're having to finish with a low back extension, the knees pop through there, the hips are locked, but this low back comes back into play right here when we finish this lift, and it becomes challenging to get that low back locked out. Now with a heavier weight, that might have even been some up-down motion, or potentially a bit of a hitch to try to get that, oop, I don't know what I did there. I have no idea what that means. The other thing I'm seeing here is, again, that sort of getting too upright. Now, when we start the lift here, you can see he strives during this pause to become more upright. So the bar lifts off the floor, and we'll just make a little mark here so you guys are watching the right place. The bar lifts off the floor right about here. Now, let's switch to watching the lifter's back position. So the bar's off the floor. Now see how he fights to get more upright? That is generally counterproductive, because what you're then doing is you're pulling your shoulders back, which is going to pull the bar back into you. It's going to push the knees forward, and yes, it might get you a little bit more upright, but it is kind of self-defeating in terms of the efforts you're putting into the initial phase of the range of motion. So what I would rather see you do is, here we go. Start off with your hips further back and a little bit of a steeper back angle. A little bit of a more closer to parallel back angle. That way, when you come off the floor, you can just leave your shoulders directly aligned over the bar, get that feeling of pushing the bar off the floor, and try to not to get any movement either way out of the trunk in the initial phase of the range of motion. That way, you're not fighting to get super upright during the pause. You're able to kind of lock in a position and hold it throughout the lift in terms of your trunk, because we can see the upper body position change a number of times throughout that lift. So that would be the biggest thing I would work on. A little bit more extension in the low back, kick the butt back behind you. I see you're trying to open your hips up really wide. That's not always the best thing for people. A lot of people think the sumo deadlift has to be super knees out, super hips forward, and that's when we end up with exactly this fault where the knees are out super wide. We can't maintain that without tucking the butt underneath, and that just puts us in a little bit of a less advantageous position. So hopefully all that advice makes sense and helps you out, Kellen, and hopefully that helps you with your positioning issues. All right, our last video of the day is coming from Boris, and Boris is doing some squats here. So let's take a look at what Boris has for his squats. He didn't really give us much context. He just said, "Could you form check me, please?" Why, yes, Boris, we can. And actually, you look really familiar. I think we might have looked at you on this channel once before. So let's take a look. Maybe you submitted for a live stream. So again, a lot of changes in the trunk angle. I think that, let's go back a little bit. In this first squat, so here we have one trunk angle and we're pretty extended. We're really trying to kind of reach the chest out. We're opening the ribs up. We're seeing the ribs kind of open up like this, as opposed to staying in a nice sort of ribs down position, which is something that I would recommend you try just based on how much trunk movement we're getting throughout this squat. So we're really ribs up, and then we get to the bottom and you can see things change. We go from super extended to a more neutral position. And I think that if you allowed yourself to be in a more neutral position from the get-go, you wouldn't get this shift in trunk position throughout the bottom of your lift, which a lot of times is going to cause that bar to move, and that's moving against you. That's creating momentum in the opposite direction, which is generally something you don't want. So again, and then again, as we come up, you're arching back into that position. You can see the bar path. Now, bar path isn't the be-all, end-all, but if we watch the bar path here, watch how much further back this way it goes as he goes through the end of the lift. See it just shoot back there as he arches his back into it. And then when we come down, we're coming down further back. The bar pops forward. And then again, oh, see, that was a little more straight on the way up. We didn't get that exaggerated arching back into the bar on the way up. So the second rep concentric is a lot better on the way up there. We're a lot smoother, staying in a little bit more close, staying a little closer to the position you hit the bottom in. So let's just watch this whole thing in real time, and I'll show you guys kind of where I think Boris is going wrong here. So too overextended to start with. I think a little more ribs down here would allow you to not kind of crunch forward in the bottom like that. And then again, not arching back super hard into the bar on the way up. Now this second rep, way more neutral back position. If you notice the bar speed out of the bottom, notice the bar speed out of the bottom. Watch, we get a little bit stuck here. It slows down as he tries to arch back into it. The second one, a lot smoother when we keep that trunk at a more consistent angle. And that's the big thing. I don't think that arched is better. I don't think that super neutral is better. I think that consistency in the trunk position is way more important. So being consistent in how your trunk is set throughout the squat. If you watch somebody squat and their trunk is like this the whole time and it's just moving like this, a lot of times that's going to be a way more efficient squat than if somebody's trunk is kind of wiggling, extending, flexing, extending, flexing. A lot of those things are going to cause inefficiencies in the lift. So there we go, guys. That is Form Check Friday. Now, if you guys are interested, again, submissions for Form Check Friday should go to formcheckfriday@gmail.com. Also, we have a series of seminars coming up in the UK, so head over to calgarybarbell.com in the coaching shop and come see us in person. Allow us to critique your technique, and hopefully we'll see some of you guys out there. All right, guys, if you liked the video, hit a like. Any questions or comments about anything I critiqued, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I would love to have a constructive discussion if you guys have differing viewpoints or if you guys agree with what I'm saying. So please do that. Hit that subscribe button for the next one to be in the loop for the next one. And we'll see you guys soon. All right, take care.